what a dummy! Welcome back to the Fantasy Rugby Draft podcast. Thanks for downloading and listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. Joining me in the booth is the man primarily made of moss, Nathan Mossman. How are you, mate?
That's right, it's your boy Moss, aka the man primarily Moss, aka Moss Def, aka Nate Dog, aka Moss Khalifa, holla, we them boys, aka yes, my t-shirt comes in men's, aka Molly Moss, aka it's probably Natai, I think it'll be Natai anyway, aka No Trophy Nate, aka Don't Type No Podcast asking me how I am, aka Rogue Trader, aka Caveat Enter, aka better check that injury news because you know I will trade you Ryan Van Rensburg in cold blood.
Wow, that's impressive. That's really good. We're going to have to put that on repeat. There goes our theme tune.
Yeah, I just thought I'd mix it up, just do something a little different.
Mix it up. I do like the Van Rensburg touch there. That'll barb a few. In this podcast, we're going to freewheel a little bit. We're going to talk about the playoffs, a couple of Fantasy Rugby Draft announcements as well, which is pretty cool. You can follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Rugby Draft. It's Fantasy RUG Draft. We're on Facebook as well. We put a lot of the top leagues, top managers up there. So if you want to see how you're getting on or see who the top leagues are, then have a look at those. Send us a note at support@fantasyrugbydraft.com if you want to do it behind closed doors. We've also got our Facebook Hall of Fame group, which is tossing around some pretty cool ideas. It gets pretty fresh at this time of year because there's a lot of interesting trades, shall we say, and rules being created. So it's probably a good place to go if you've got a court ruling that you want to come down on and get a general consensus on. I guess from this podcast, subscribe to iTunes. We're also on SoundCloud as well. Leave us a review if you'd like, but subscribing is the most important as it gets you this podcast quite a few hours earlier than it would be if you had to go around and search for it. Before I jump into a couple of announcements, Mossman, I wanted to give you a little bit of backslap and a little bit of congratulations. I know that you've certainly made the playoffs already, and you've done it in a canter in two of our leagues. Have you done it in the third one as well, Billy Dub?
Not yet. No, it's
still in the balance.
I'm in the box, probably in the box seat.
Right.
As in, I could potentially lose and still go through, but realistically, need to win.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. So, what would you? So, if we go back and just, I don't want to get into too much detail because we'll spend another pod actually doing this. But what would you kind of pinpoint your success to be? Apart from dashing good looks.
I think it goes right back to the strategy right from the beginning. And that was, in all of my leagues, I just targeted the players that I thought were going to be the best value rather than score the most points.
Yep.
And as it turned out that in the majority of cases, it was a Karevi, Rowan Van Rensburg 1-2. Now, obviously, Van Rensburg's gone. There's nothing you can do about that, but it actually got me to where I am now, I think.
Correct. No, I agree. And because I've been looking over the season as well, I haven't done nearly as well as you have. And what I've put down, my failures, apart from being dashingly good looking as well, is the second round. Because that's where I was pulling players like Lima Sopawanga and Quade Cooper and Elton Yankees. I'm okay with Moanga and Barrett early. I think you still would have got value for money there with those two, but it's after that where you're trying to get that second tier, and you get it in the second round, where you could have got a Rico Ioane, you could have got a Van Rensburg and those types of players.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, Barrett and Moanga were both first round picks for me, just towards the end.
Yep.
But I guess the difference between me and most other people is I just felt there's no way that Karevi should fall outside the top three. And of course, in all the leagues, that's what happened, and that's where I ended up with him.
Could well be the most important player from here on in fantasy. Plays all the games, decent matchups, could win your titles.
That's right. I mean, of all the, I guess we'd say, really top players, as Jamie Redknapp likes to say, he probably is the one that is playing all the games, really.
Literally.
Yeah.
Sorry. A couple of cool announcements about Fantasy Rugby Draft. I'm just going on to the product a little bit. We've kind of been working a little bit in the background on a few things for y'all. And as a kind of a way of congratulating the managers who have made the playoffs, we're going to give everyone a little sneak preview of our Manager Pro that we're going to release. So we're going to do that and plug it in somewhere in the middle of the Lions series so that you have it for the second half of semi-final one and the rest of the playoffs. Quite how many of the cool features we can include. Depends on how much beer is going to be drunk over the Lions series itself. But at least include some of the things like team news pumped directly into your lineup, and it's also into the player hub as well. It's really cool. It's going to save you a boatload of time, having to look around team sheets and things like that. And we've been trialling this with a few folks, a few select managers, and so far it's pretty good feedback. I know my dad, his winning percentage increased quite significantly now he's got that information readily at hand. Mossman, I know you've got a few guys in one of your leagues that have trialled it. How are they faring with it?
Yeah, they didn't know they were trialling it. It was a slightly Machiavellian, in the sense that I just kind of gave it to the people that I thought might struggle, just as a kind of a bit of an experiment about how it might pan out. And it's had an effect. To be fair, some of those guys who I expected to be perhaps not so much in contention this year, they are up there. I know one particular guy from last year who was 0-9 at one point, and he only just bowed out of playoff contention, I think, over the last week. So,
okay,
hey, you know.
No, look, I've who should know, most players know starting teams and everything. I've been tripped up a number of times, and having that plugged right into your lineup, right alongside the player, whether they're starting or not, makes a big difference. And it's also quite good for when players are being pulled at the last minute as well, or you miss something on a Saturday morning and you log on and you've missed a bit of team news and you see that Sonny Bill Williams has been pulled out. So it is pretty handy. As I say, we'll give you a little treat and we'll roll it out for the playoff series. Don't need to do anything. At some stage we'll turn this into a subscription play, but for now, enjoy it.
Yeah, and you're right. I think it's those situations where you're just targeting a particular team. You're like, I really need a cheater this week, and I need a cheater outside back, and you don't want to have to sort of trawl through looking for them, necessarily. You just want it to come up. And the other thing is that when you notice it more and more at this stage of the season, when you go into the player hub and it shows you the free agents, and there's all these guys that have floated to the top because they've scored a lot of points and now they're out injured or something, and you're like, well, I don't really care about how many points they've got now. I care about what they've done over the last couple of weeks, because that's really all that's important right now.
Yeah, that's right. So you're talking about the averages that we're going to try and include, and then also the form.
The form especially, yeah.
The form especially, I think, is going to be really important.
Yeah, it's just a case of, what have you done for me lately, right?
Totally, absolutely. And that's one thing, because total points effectively really just tells you you've got a good injury history. Yeah. That's really all it does. You're out there playing rugby.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the top of your free agent list at the moment, like Duncan Paiua is going to be up there somewhere, Yeah,
that's right.
Now, you don't want to own him, but he's scored a lot of points he scored a lot. He scored enough points to get himself up there because he's basically played every game.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. The second bit of news that I wanted to kind of share with you folks, actually I'll ask you a question first, Mossman. What do you think the number one question our managers ask us? Actually, it's the number two question behind where did you get your spray tan?
So, is this just in general over the length of competition or right now?
No, over the general, over the length of the competition and also about the product. What do you think the number one question is that managers ask us?
Have you got a mobile app?
Yep, that's it. That's exactly it.
Right.
Yep, that's right. So pretty much everyone we chat to asks us, in some way, shape or form, when's the app coming out? It'd be really cool if you could have an app.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we wanted one too, so we're going to launch a Kickstarter campaign to fund one. We're going to try and put up some pretty cool rewards for pledges, but I guess the main benefit to managers is we're going to be able to manage your team on the go, get over some login issues we have, constantly zooming in and out, that type of thing. We're pretty excited. We'll let you know once we've launched the campaign. We've got a bit of work to do in the background to make it into a bit of an attractive proposition, so not just managers of Fantasy Rugby Draft currently would put in, but for folks who are coming across it for the first time. For the last kind of 3 years, we haven't really asked managers to dip in their pockets or flooded you with ads or anything, so this is the first time we're really going to have our cap in our hand a little bit, so looking for some fat cash. An app would be really, really awesome. I mean, we can't wait.
No, it would be great.
Yeah, but it just get it over that frustrations, but also just make it a little bit easier, right? So, we're trying to make quite a funny, quirky type video of us. Actually, I'll tell you a short story. So we went and watched the movies. I'm trying to do the funny story about how it's so impractical to be on your laptop and in most places to adjust your lineup. So we went to the Hoyt Cinemas down in Wairau Park in Auckland, and we were videoing, my wife and I were videoing the video of Emily at the front of the line with the laptop out, just trying to kind of be funny about, how impractical it is.
Yeah.
We got the manager who came down and said, "What are you filming for?" And he tapped us aside, took us to the back room, and we had to explain that it was nothing to do commercially, and it was just to do with Facebook.
Yeah. We're going to bootleg with a laptop, and we're going to hold it in front of everybody in the line.
I know. It was so funny. I did have a back. I thought that they were going to have a go at me for videoing the movie or whatever. I can understand someone being quite tight on that, but no, they were thinking that we were doing a shoot.
Right. Yeah, without authorization, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the old idea of a Kickstarter, if folks are new to it, is that you put up a goal of, I don't know, 10K or something like that, and if you fail to reach the goal, then the money doesn't get the money gets refunded to you. If you get over that goal, then great, you can put it to another version of the app anyway. So we'll let you know when that campaign's launched. But yeah, we were pretty excited of this side. Right, let's get into something that actually might be useful in the interim for everyone, the playoffs. Perhaps I should just take a kind of step back to a lot of folks who might be tuning in for the first time. Most, I guess, listening to the podcast are fairly bedded in managers, but the format is the top from each conference go through and the next two best records, so the top four go through, and then the other 6 teams don't make the playoffs, and their teams, the players on those teams are dead as well, and they're locked in those places after the game week lock this week. So you can't trade in the playoffs, and they can't add and cut if you haven't made the playoffs, if you're not in the playoffs. In the playoffs themselves, it's a 2-leg semi-final, and the combined scores go through to the final. The wrinkle this year is that Sands has done us no favours. There's 6 teams on a bye in semi-final week 2, and there's 2 teams that are removed. So all of the New Zealand teams aren't playing in semi-final week 2, plus Sharks, Lions and Cheetahs. So, all that said, Mossman, how have you approached it? Because you and I are going to have fairly differing views on it, because you have clinched a little bit earlier and I'm scrapping away to get that last playoff spot in a couple of my leagues.
Yeah, so it's partly the way my team turned out anyway, but it's also a symptom of some of the trades I've made. But I've got a teams or squads that are quite heavy on South African players and Jags players. It's actually interesting because I think as a general rule, I've actually steered clear of New Zealand players this season, and it's actually set me up okay, which is weird because you'd expect them to be quite high scoring, but it's more the ones that I have gone for. So obviously I've got Damien McKenzie in a certain league, but, and I've got quite a few Blues players. The Matt Duffy and those kind of players, but I don't have, I guess, the quote unquote big name New Zealand players. Like I don't have a Barrett and Moanga, the Julian Sevillas, these kind of guys. I actually don't have a lot of All Blacks.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
It's weird. It's just, for whatever reason, I guess they were considered overvalued for me. And part of that was on name. So anyway, to make a short story very long, that's for my teams are actually set up in that I can field a false team in week 16.
Okay, all right. So
and that was one of the key things for me.
Yeah, it is, and one of the you look at that semi-final week 2, and if you wanted to transpose the other 2 weeks of the playoffs out, the 2 teams that jump out to me are the Stormers and the Warriors, and we've mentioned this a while ago as well. That is what appears to be a little bit of a softer schedule, quite what it looks like in a month's time. I guess we'll find out. But those are the kind of angles that you'd like to look down as well. But I guess one thing that I've also trying to be a little bit conscious of, and it's not for this week as well, it's just knowing your waiver wire type. I think it's going to be quite crucial having quite a high waiver wire pick in that going into semi-final week 2 and in the final. And what I've seen recently, and I don't know if this is more, if you've seen this in other leagues as well, if you only use your waiver wire rank once a week, so you pick the absolute gem you can get and you think's out there, and don't waver from that, excuse the pun, if you don't move away from that, chances are you're going to be fairly high on the priority in the next week as well. And I've actually seen, I don't know if this is a conscious decision by you, Mossman, but you've done that in the old podcast league, and you've always been fairly high on the waiver wire ranking because you only pick up one a week. Maybe because you've got a fairly settled team and you're fairly happy, or it could be a dastardly plan. What say you?
I think a lot of the time I look at the waiver wire and I think, well, because the teams have been changing a lot between week to week, or some of them have, that it's almost not worth, you're taking a gamble that the player you pick up is actually going to start in some ways. Obviously there's some of that, are pretty clear, but it's a symptom of probably having a reasonably settled team and also thinking, you know what, I'm actually better to wait till Thursday and not burn that waiver pick unless I really need to.
Yeah, look, you've picked up a couple of really important picks for someone who has been leading, both of the leagues that I've been. You've managed to grab two pick. It's a bit contra to what other people actually would think. You'd think the guys at the bottom are picking up the gens, but you've managed to as well. But I guess some of that is down to it resetting as opposed to not resetting. But still, I think it's going to be quite valuable to have that, to keep that in your back pocket come semi-final 2 and the final. For me, so I guess maybe I should start by saying, unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know I'm a Crusaders fan. I had the Moleskins, the RM Williams, I had an Airtex as well. So I come from a position of support of the Crusaders, but I'm going to recommend to dump your Crusaders. Now, I think I should kind of couch that to say, obviously I don't mean dump your Crusaders and Richie Mwanga for Francois Brummer type thing, but I'm suggesting that this week they're playing the Rebels, so that's a really attractive match. There's going to be a lot of points scored in that match. If you've already clinched, the next match after that, the first week is the Chiefs, and then the last week is going to be the Hurricanes. So the Chiefs match is, it's at home for the Crusaders. That's going to be a bit of a slog. And the Hurricanes match, there is an outside chance that the Razor could actually refresh the squad after the Lions series and rest quite a few of the Crusaders guys. Because I think the third test is the 8th of July, and then the Hurricanes match versus Crusaders is 1 week after that. That's your final. And once bitten, twice shy. Last season, a lot of managers got killed in that match. I guess it's just whether the Crusaders will have the luxury to do this. Razor will have the luxury. The Hurricanes should beat the Chiefs at home. Sorry, Mossman. And it's likely going to come down to who gets a bonus point against the Chiefs about whether they can rest folks. But they've got quite a decent lead at the moment. There's 54 points to effectively 48, I think, if you count the bonus point win for the Chiefs and the Hurricanes. But they play each other as well. So that's a long way about saying players like Bridge, Goodhue, Crotty, Havili, Samu, Todd, they're in for a big, should they start, obviously, they're in for a big payday this weekend. If you target some managers that need to get into the playoffs and need to win this week and try and get some variation of, say, Juarez or Stormers players back who don't actually have a good matchup this week, so the Juarez Brumbies is not great. The Brumbies seem to grind most teams down and slow everything down. Same thing with the Stormers and the Sharks. I'm not confident that that's going to be a high-scoring affair as opposed to the Crusaders Rebels match. So I think you could dangle them out and see if you can get players like Moyano, like Tuchelet, like De La Fuente, who's back from injury, like SP Murray, Sinatla, Cheslin Kobe, maybe even Lades if Thompson's starting.
Well, I'll throw one at you. Obviously Mwanga, who's super high profile. And, I think maybe you could try and swap him for Foley, who is somebody who has actually been putting up massive points, but kind of doing it, and because he plays for a team that's effectively shit.
Yep.
It's kind of been under the radar, and because he hasn't played a full season, he's not appearing at the top of the list, and so it's a little bit deceptive in some ways, but he's been right up there in terms of points per game. He's going to play every game, and he's got, the Juarez in week 16 and then the Force in the final, which, I'd suspect that Foley would score a few in that one.
Yeah, no, that's a good shout. And I think you just need to sell the dream, right? You just need to sell the picture to the person who owns Foley at the moment and say, they're going away from home, the Highlanders, New Zealand team. If you need to get in the playoffs this week, then, you probably want Richie Mwanga, who's going to score you 40 points against the Rebels.
That's right. Yep, exactly.
So that whole premise as well, you need to... I don't know if it's just just me, Mossman, but in a lot of my leagues this year are really tight. Like there'll be a couple of guys that are leading the conferences or kind of broken away, but then in most of my other leagues, it's kind of, there's 6 people or 7 people fighting out for like 2 spots. It's pretty tough.
Oh, yeah, you throw a blanket over them in some of these leagues for sure.
So I think you need to be cognizant of exactly what other managers need to do this week. Even if you're in a fairly comfortable position and you need like a catalogue of errors to happen, I think it's worthwhile having a look at some of these players that do have good matchups, because the Waratahs, they play all 3 games and they're okay matchups as well, as you've just highlighted. So yeah, you can probably get a few Crusaders, and you maybe even need to give 1 Crusader up to get a couple of those players in those positions. One player that I wanted to that I think is a bit of a bold statement considering where we are now, but I have a feeling Nico Sanchez is going to have a heavy say in these playoff races. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, assuming he gets picked, but
that's the thing,
he's
right?
someone
That's why it's bold. That's why it's kind of we just don't know.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, someone we sort of picked out a few weeks back, and since that time, we've had some cause to doubt, I guess. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's somebody that I'm kind of relying on in my playoff run as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't want to do a Mwanga for Sanchez, but maybe you do a Mwanga for Sanchez and Moyano or something like that. Don't know. But at least that gives you 3 playing starters and 2 very big upside players. It's a bit of a roll of dice with Sanchez, but risk and reward. He's got 3 pretty good matchups, and he plays those games as well.
So can I just?
You can.
You just got me thinking. So the Stormers, they are a long way in front of the Bulls in that conference. Mm-hmm. Is there a chance that they will rest in that final week, maybe?
Yep. I guess yes, there probably is. Fleck likes playing young players, so it wouldn't surprise me if he gives the likes of a Damien Villemay and Brandon Thompson a little bit of a trot out. I guess because they're playing the Bulls this week, and they've got a pretty good run, don't they? I mean, this is what we've just highlighted, so they're going to be well ahead. They probably still want to challenge the Lions, though, in terms of
total points.
Yeah, in terms of total points, if it did come down to it, they would. Can they challenge the Lions? I need to have a look at that, but they would still want to see if they can get a home record, right?
Yeah, they're on 30 points at the moment, and the Lions are on 51. So, so 21 points with, how many weeks to go? 4?
That's not going to happen.
No.
And so you pointed out 3rd place to them, was it? Okay, all right. Yeah, no, that's going to be tough. There is a chance that they could be sandwiched in the middle and can't go up, can't go down.
That's right. Yeah. So just sort of gave me pause for the Stormers maybe in that week 17.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's very true. Same thing with the Crusaders that we just talked about, right? And having the ability or having the luxury of being able to rest those guys. What's the last game that they're playing? Did you say the Bulls?
It's the Bulls, yeah.
Oh, so but that's a personal.
It is, yeah. And I guess the flip side to that is that they've got a lot of players returning from injury as well, and they're probably happy to give those guys a run out. I would have thought if Jean-Luc Dupree is fit and playing 10. He'd need game time. You'd think Damien Delende would probably need game time. He's not going to be playing for the Box. There's probably quite a few of them that are coming back from injury that could use game time. Sinatla, some of these guys. So possibly the guys that you're looking towards, maybe it's different for Itzebeth and Steph Dutoy, but, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. That's a great, throwing a grenade in. It's a fair shout. There is a chance, just as the same as the Crusaders, right? There's a fair chance that you have to, don't know. Where are we at with the 10 for the Stormers, actually? Let's just have a look at that. Because at the moment I read an article that Fleck was talking about how the Stormers had a hell of a lot more structure in that second half when Thompson started coming and playing in 10 and Lades shifted out to the fullback.
Yeah, I think I'd probably read the same thing. They said Lades is the best organiser in the back 3, so they missed him not being there. I also read that Kurt Coleman's back in training.
Oh God, I read that too.
So they said this week might be a little bit too early for him, but the thing is that has almost no bearing on anything, though, does it? Because I think by the time those games tick around, well, we don't know for sure, do we, about Jean-Luc? But
no, we don't. Yeah, it's a weird injury. We haven't heard too much information about that. I was just going to point out that Cape Town had two bits of news this week, some good, some bad. The All Blacks are going back there after I don't know how many years, and the bad news being that Kurt Coleman's back on deck. Goodness me, they're all hiding behind their hands at the moment. Okay, so yeah, buyer beware, Stormers, Crusaders, and maybe that raises players and teams like the Waratahs and like the Rebels, should I say, or the Force, these kind of fringe players. Certainly on the Waratahs, you've pulled out a good couple of guys there as well with Bernard Foley. Michael Foley, as I heard on the Green and Gold podcast today. Bloody good.
Is Bernard Foley a couple of guys?
Bernard and Foley.
Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's like No Sean Marino. Yeah, we'll move on. Do you want to talk about any more about the teams? I've got a little bit. I wanted to have a quick chat about some rules and some trading. Did you want to have any more about playoffs and who you might want to look at?
Probably the only other thing I'd just point out is that if you haven't had a close look at the fixture list, if you're just looking at it in terms of our game weeks, then it might not be obvious that there's a big gap between the first round, so week 15, and there's a big gap between some of the games in week 15 and others.
That's right.
So if you're looking at South African teams which play, well, basically it's a month away, right?
That's right. End of June.
Yeah. So things can change in that time. So if you're kind of looking at it and thinking, it's the team that rolls out this week or week 15 will be much the same. Well, a lot could change between now and then. And so kind of be aware that there is that big gap. So if there are players that are currently out injured, but, relatively short-term injuries, they'll probably be back at that point. So if you're relying on someone that took their spot, and to be honest, no one immediately springs to mind. But
one player does.
Oh, yeah?
Andre Pollard.
Okay, yeah, sure. So there's an example. I mean, I thought it was week 17, but you never know, right? So it could be...
I actually heard that he was going to come back for the Springboks. I heard that he's racing to play France.
Oh, is that right?
So I'm not sure if he actually got named in Sears overnight. I need to check that. I didn't see the name there, and I think it is going to be Yankees, but I read a report that he was trying to get fit for that.
Sure.
But your point is absolutely valid, right? The first half of semi-final game week, first League One, is the New Zealand teams and the old Australian teams, and then the second half, and that's 3rd of June or somewhere around there, next weekend. And then you've got a month break, and you've got some pretty physical encounters there with the Lions playing the All Blacks and France, South Africa, beating the crap out of each other, and then Fiji beating the crap out of Australia. So there's going to be some big matches in there as well, and probably more importantly, there's going to be some big injuries. So you're only going to be locked the players that are locked at that first half, if you get what I mean, those games. So there is going to be the opportunity. And I wonder if this is going to be a little bit of a tactic as well, as if you've got a player that's 50-50, whether it's a player in the first half of the game week or the second half, you may want to lean to the second half so you've got options to cut someone or add someone during that kind of month-long period and not have that bench spot locked. I wonder if that might be a tactic as well.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And then just one last thing, and that's that obviously with the big gap, and we're talking about how things change, somebody like Akira Ioane, who's obviously getting a run in the team now, and you look at it, but because there's such a big gap between now and week 17, which is, potentially when Jerome Kano could be back, and he might not be in the team at that point.
Yeah, that's right. Another interesting bit as well, and we've talked about this quite at length, is the under-20s as well. So the final is actually June 19, so halfway through that first semi-final. And the second half of this, so it starts semi-final week 1, starts on the 30th of June. So you've got 2 weeks after that. Now, all the articles that I read before the likes of Bosch went away and the likes of Isaiah Parise went away was that they were done for Super Rugby for the year. Now, I'm not sure if that's just lazy journalism or not, or if people just haven't checked to see what the actual dates are. But I'll be surprised if these guys were done, unless there's something I'm missing. I'm not 100% sure Bosch will have the same value with Lambie playing, but we all know Lambie's recording. But the story is that he potentially will play this week. There's better signs from his concussion. He seems to have recovered. But, Jesus, it's Patrick Lambie for crying out loud. All of this injury to him, which is almost a safe bet. And Kerwin Bosch has got massive value. So just something to be checked out. We've had a few people asking us about when the will the under 20 Skiers come back, and we just have no idea. Right, anything more from players or anything? I want to get into some trades and some talk about rules and stuff.
Yep, let's do that.
All right, cool. So it's funny season. It's folks that are playing for the first time. They're starting to realise ways that they can gain an advantage by trading with folks that have nothing to live for. I guess we've always said that it's good to be quite explicit around what your rules are at the start. Now, these usually are a moving target in so much as you'll come across a scenario during the season and you'll gauge the reaction from everybody, take it to a bit of a vote, and then everybody knows where they stand for the next year, and they just try and manage as best as they can for the current year. So it's really good to see if you can have a list of rules and list them out and make sure that it's available for everyone else in the league. I know we're pretty guilty of not actually having a manifesto, if you will, but it is good to have that. And it's not only just for the rules themselves, but what happens if someone breaks the rules for the first time, for the second time? What are the punishments for doing that? Things like draft picks, or, what do you have to do to actually get expelled from the league? But one that's come up on one of our old podcast league, or the old podcast league, was around managers trading with other managers who are out of contention now. I wanted to get your take on it.
Yeah, my take is that I think that as long as that person is still, that manager that's out of contention is still trying to win games, then I don't have a problem with it. So if they're trading to give themselves an advantage to win a game, I think generally it's fine, as long as it's not crazy kind of skewed. And I know that that's, kind of tough to police, but it's a bit tough to say. There's a couple of things. So first is to say, okay, well, you're not allowed to do anything, so you're not allowed to improve your team, try to win, you're done, I mean, we've actually put it out before. You do have a lifetime win percentage that you can see when you're in your profile, and that might be important to some people. They might be like, I'm trying to get as many wins as I can. Yep. You also might have a league where you get punished for finishing last, and therefore, you don't want that wooden spoon. So there's all that, and also the fact that, and it was pointed out by somebody yesterday, that if those managers aren't allowed to trade and to improve their team and try to win, then that's actually going to disadvantage other people who are relying on them to win for them to get into the playoffs as well.
No, look, absolutely. And they're all valid points. And I think that's what you need to have that discussion with your managers to feel which side of the fence they're going. I'm on the other side of the fence. I personally don't do it myself. If I'm out of contention, I won't trade. But I understand exactly what you've said. They're trying to win. The difficulty for me is it can get into a grey area, and you're trying to figure out who is actually honestly trying to win. But then there is the second part of it where they're not actually looking at the next 4 weeks. They're only looking at 1 week. So a trade this week, for instance, like a Murphy for, say, a Henko Venter might make sense because Murphy's got a tough matchup and Venter's playing the Sunwolves. So if I was in the playoffs, I'd be a little bit upset that trade Murphy was going on to one of my playoff-bound teams. But I think where we came down was kind of a happy medium in that allow the trade as long as 2 of the other 3 managers that are in those playoff spots approve it. I think that was and I saw that I think we stole it from Bruce Baxter on the Hall of Fame. I think that was a really good suggestion. I think he was a bit more dictatorial, but this seems to be kind of a happy medium. What say you?
One thought I actually had was that if you could somehow make it like an open hand, if you're playing cards. So you say, this is the trade that we're thinking about doing, and actually give other people the opportunity to make a better offer. Because that way, if it's,
like an auction.
It's an auction. Yeah, exactly. Because I think the thing that annoys people is that when they see this trade pop up, and it's, Milner Scudder for Blommakeys or, the Murphy one that you were just talking about, and they're like, oh, I would have given you somebody much better. But, you know, I didn't know that you were thinking this way. Yep. So, you know, at least if it's kind of out in the open, you can go, oh, really? Okay, you're prepared to do that. How about this guy instead? You know, better option. And I don't think you can complain then. Anybody can complain because it's all open, right? So if you really want that guy, well, you just got to put a better offer in.
Yep. Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't think that's a bad approach. I still think I'd prefer the voting approach myself.
Yes, sure.
But it's a good wrinkle. I like it. And these are the conversations you need to have with your managers and whoever is the commish. Just see if you can tease as many people out of their holes to get a little bit of a vote and to see which way you'd go. Have you fielded any other weird questions from any other rules from your guys this season?
No, we did talk about. Well, there was a couple of things. Well, the first one was we talked about having a trade period that ends, 2 weeks before the end of the season, maybe.
Yep.
But it was just sort of talked about. It was never really implemented. So I think that's something that can get around some of the things you talked about. So maybe
100%.
It would be 2 weeks from the end. So that's something that you can kind of do unofficially. And we did have, I guess, an incident, you might say, where somebody who was out of contention started trading to field an entire Highlanders lineup.
Yep.
And I said, look, this trading, I tried to explain to him that trading to get yourself a novelty team rather than trading to actually win is effectively just tanking to me. You're not trying. So, and I think that message eventually kind of got through and, that it didn't turn out to be a full Highlanders lineup. Now, the funny thing about it was if he had fielded that full Highlanders lineup, you would have won, and he actually lost. And he pointed that out to me, and I said, but that's not the point. That wasn't my point.
Yep, it's the same argument it's not the same argument, it's similar to saying, see, I told you Geordie Barrett was good, and by selecting him 5th overall.
Yeah, that's right.
No, that's not the point. You could have got Beauden Barrett and Geordie Barrett. And Scott Barrett. And all of the Barretts, Mrs. Barrett. But yeah, no, I did find that quite amusing. There was another guy that emailed in to us, and fair play to these people that are just kind of testing the water. They're playing for the first time. They haven't played in a league before. They don't know the responsibilities. And he asked, I've already clinched. He said, how important is points for actually in the playoffs? Because I'm thinking of benching all my team and just starting a lock to showboat against one of these guys. And I thought that's pretty funny. Ultimately, it is your team, but I think you do have a responsibility to the rest of the league to make sure that you do at least field a team. And one of our rules is that you don't tank. We don't have keepers yet, which is where you can keep a player for a draft round pick that you picked it for this year, year on year. We don't have that, which means that you have to be a little bit more careful about tanking. We also don't have the reverse of the trade pick. So if you keep throwing away, like for instance, you just keep throwing games and you get to the bottom of your league to get a top draft pick. So we don't have that either. So one of our kind of unwritten rules is just no tanking, and this kind of goes along with that as well. Any more rules or trades that you've seen that you wanted to go through?
Probably the only other trade was one that I might throw your way. So I know we were sort of talking about various things. You kind of need a halfback this week, and were asking me about various people. I was thinking, and you're quite keen on Pulu, which I can understand. He's top halfback in the game. And I was wondering, you've got Jean-Luc Duplessis sitting on your bench there.
I do. Okay, I do. So I was thinking today, as I was putting in a shift, about the last time Pulu played the Chiefs. Can you remember that?
Yeah.
They annoyed the shit out of Pulu. He lost his cool, and I can't actually remember how many points he got, but he had a terrible match. That was the Luatua head high tackle, I think, match.
That's right. Yeah.
So I was a little bit hesitant, but you're right. He is the top, literally, the top halfback in the game at the moment. Do I do it for Jean? I've got another trade out there for Jean-Luc. I've been offered by Mr. Mike Haig.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there's 1,000 people that probably could say that same sentence. But He's put Shotaimi out for me, and I've just had a Milani Nanai hole in my team thanks to Tana Umaga again. Not even on the bench. Cheers. So I'm not entirely sure of the best approach. I do need a halfback. Do I need to shut up? So originally we talked about Osborne or Corabetti, right? Because I thought you were a slightly thinner outside back. Because who's your bench outside backs in that league? It's Carmichael Hunt and someone else. English, is it?
That's right, yeah. Yep, that's it.
Yeah. So I wondered if you'd want Corabetti or you want Osborne. But if you're saying you prefer Jean-Luc.
Well, I mean, what I really need is a... Well, yeah, I'll say that. I've got Cruden as my fly half, right? So I do need somebody for week 16.
That is your hole. I've spotted that. You've trotted out the Francois Brummer. Not a difficult thing to spot when you see an ad come through of Francois Brummer, who's playing the Hurricanes this week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But no, I don't mind that. I think I prefer that because I've got Osborne and Corabetti on my bench. Jesus. I did hold on. I was hoping for it.
Yeah, I know what you were trying to do.
Yeah, I know. I was hoping that I'd have Jean-Luc for the playoffs, but I don't think I can put myself in that position. We'll think about it. I'll let you know at pub quiz in 20 minutes.
Excellent.
One other thing that I wanted to talk about was a couple of folks from the Aviva Premiership have asked us about the trophies column and when that's going to be updated for Aviva. We'll do that in the Lions break as well. So we'll get that updated for you so you can have a nice shiny new trophy in that column to trot out to your other managers. Anything more from you, mate?
No, there isn't.
All right, cool. Quick reminder how to contact us again. Fantasy Rugby Draft, that's Fantasy Rugby Draft on Twitter, or an email support@fantasyrugbydraft.com. We'll let you know when our Kickstarter campaign comes out, and I hope you all enjoy the Manager Pro. We'll look to have a playoff, a kind of a regular season wrap up next week as well for the podcast. But for now, thanks for listening. I'm Bruce Wilkinson. He's Nathan Mossman.
Yeah, I said it all at the top.
What a bastion by Christian Cullen. Plenty of support and what a